Chrystia Freeland is the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Hi, Minister Freeland. Great pleasure to welcome you back to the studio here.
Great to be with you, Vashi.
Thank you for making the time. You said the changes to the Competition Act that your legislation today introduces and the meeting with grocery store CEOs this week will mean less sticker shock for Canadians at the grocery store. In tangible terms for Canadians watching right now, what does that mean?
What that means is we understand that the cost of living and prices of your groceries are a huge challenge for Canadians right now. And we know that those prices need to stabilize. And that is what we are working very hard to achieve.
What does stabilize mean? Can you be specific?
Sure. It means they need to stop going up.
So when Canadians go to the grocery store by Thanksgiving, which is the deadline that your government articulated exactly 1 week ago, does that mean that the price of turkey will not be more than it was a month ago, or the price of chicken, or, you know what I mean? Anything specific along those lines?
So Francois Philippe and I met with the CEOs of the main grocers on Monday, and we were very clear and very firm with them that they need to be part of a Team Canada effort to stabilize prices. But we also believe in a Team Canada effort. So, this is not about central planning. And so we said to them, over to you guys, come up with a plan. You have to come up with the plan fast because you have to get prices down. So I'm not going to preempt that work that each of the major grocers is doing. But I do want to say to you, Vashi, and to all Canadians who are listening, that we take this very seriously. We are hopeful that there can be a collaborative Team Canada approach, but all of the tools in the federal government's toolbox are available for us to use if we don't get adequate plans. I am confident we will.
Is it your view that grocers are to blame for escalating food costs for Canadians? Your colleagues have said to me specifically, for example, this week, that the profits are undue that these grocers are making and that they're on the backs of Canadians. Do you share that view?
I would put it a little differently, Vashi. What I would say is, as a country, we have an obligation to each other, and we have a collective interest in getting prices to stabilize, in ensuring the cost of living is affordable, and we expect the grocers to play ball. What I will also say, and what was addressed in the bill that I tabled in the House of Commons today, is there are some structural challenges in many sectors in the Canadian economy, including the grocery sector. The fact is we just don't have enough competition, and that's because of the structure of Canadian competition law. Canadian competition law is unusual in the world. It was designed with kind of a garrison mentality. A sense that we had to let our big companies bulk up to protect ourselves as a country. Canada is now a big, strong country, a big, strong economy, and we can afford more competition. In fact, we need more competition. And that is the medium-term structural change which is going to get prices down, keep them down.
That realization, though, that there isn't enough competition in the grocery industry, for example, is one that the Competition Bureau arrived at a number of months ago in June when it produced a report. The realization that prices are, the inflation of food prices is at a higher rate than overall inflation has been the case for a number of months. In fact, in September of last year, StatsCan said that the increase in food prices was the biggest since 1981. When Canadians look at what your government is doing right now, do you understand how they would feel it is performative in nature and late to the game?
So you started with the Competition Bureau, and I'm glad you did, because the legislation that I tabled today is very much based on that work. This is a historic change in Canadian competition law. It is not something that can or should be done lightly. You have to do it carefully. You have to do it after a lot of thought and working with people who really understand and are thoughtful about competition in the Canadian economy. So, it's a big deal what we did today, and it is going to have long-term consequences for the Canadian economy, which are going to be good for Canadians, for Canadian consumers. Do I understand why Canadians are frustrated? For sure. This is a really tough time for Canadians. This summer, I traveled to all 10 provinces of Canada. I went from coast to coast to coast because I wanted to hear directly from Canadians what they were experiencing. And I wanted to give a lot of people across the country a chance to tell me what they were feeling and what they wanted the government to be doing. And I heard two things. I heard real long-term optimism and love for Canada, like a deep conviction that I heard from so many different people in so many different places that Canada is the best country in the world, and I totally share that. I also heard real frustration and real anxiety, and people really, really challenged with the cost of living, people challenged with high prices, people challenged with high interest rates, people concerned about the future, concerned about climate change, concerned about how does Canada respond to these big issues. And that is what our government has come into this parliamentary session totally determined to do. And that's what you saw in this legislation. You saw long-term answers. The GST on purpose-built rental,
right, which you first promised
deal.
in 2015. With great respect, I take your point on what you came to realize this summer and what you heard this summer. But you can't sincerely mean that you just started to hear that in the summer. There have been price in issues that Canadians have dealt with, cost of living issues that Canadians have dealt with for months upon months upon months, the interest rates as well. For months, I also heard you say, we are going to do targeted measures. That's what we feel is the appropriate response. We don't feel we can do anything more than that. And now all of a sudden, the government can intervene to lower grocery store prices, which Canadians have been dealing with for well over a year. Can you understand how some Canadians might feel it's disingenuous and more of a response to sinking poll numbers than to the realities they face in their life?
So I would say, Vashi, actually you're comparing apples and oranges there, because the targeted measures were about direct financial support to Canadians. And that direct financial support did have to be targeted. We as a government did not believe, and we do not believe, it would be appropriate to send checks to every single Canadian to deal with the cost of living.
Sure, but you could have called the grocers to the table a year ago.
We know that would have been a vicious cycle. And we have been working on and putting in place long-term and meaningful solutions that are helping people today. Early learning and childcare is a great example. Childcare fees down 50% already, going down to $10 a day, already down to $10 a day in 4 provinces.
I don't want to take away from that. I'm not trying to say you're doing nothing. That would be disingenuous, right? I understand the Canada Child Benefit, the early childhood, the daycare thing has been huge for women my age especially. But that doesn't take away from the fact that people have been dealing with grocery store prices and food inflation and cost of living burdens for a lot longer than just the summer. And again, can you understand how Canadians would feel as though you're addressing your unpopularity versus the actual problems that they face? Because you could have done it earlier. You could have called those grocery store CEOs a year ago.
I think that Canadians are quite rightly challenged with the cost of living. They are challenged with their mortgages. They are challenged with the rent. And my message to Canadians, our message with real legislation we tabled today, is we get it and we are acting. We're acting for today. We're acting for tomorrow. And we are going to continue rolling out more and more measures to support Canadians.
If you don't mind me, I know your time is limited, just a quick question on, or 2 quick questions on, under your purview of Deputy Prime Minister, and 2 international issues. I know President Zelensky is slated to come to Canada, and I want to get your view on that in a moment. But the other big issue is these escalating tensions with India. The opposition is asking your government to provide more information to the public about how you arrived at the conclusion that the evidence you've seen is credible. Does your government intend to do that?
You know, with the situation, I think it's really important for us to come back to first principles. And it's an incredibly serious situation, and this does not often happen in life or in political life. At its heart, it's actually really simple. This is about a Canadian who was killed on Canadian soil. This is about our government prioritizing, as every Canadian government should, the safety and security of every single Canadian. And this is about our government saying Canada is a rule of law country, and the rule of law will be enforced. And that we can't allow ourselves as a country, and we will not allow ourselves as a government to be distracted from that fundamental truth at the heart of this indeed challenging situation.
Does that prohibit you from sharing any more information?
For us, this is about law enforcement, and we take very seriously our obligations when it comes to law enforcement, and that includes an obligation not to prejudice an investigation that is ongoing.
Did you always intend to make this allegation public?
Again, our key principle here is it's about the rule of law in Canada. It's about a Canadian who was killed. It is about our government. Like, I'm not saying we're being heroes here. We're just doing our job. And our job is, if a Canadian, first of all, we don't want Canadians to be killed in Canada. We don't want people to be killed in Canada. And our job is, in the unfortunate and heart-wrenching times when that does happen, we need to enforce the law, and we need to go wherever the evidence takes us, and we will.
President Zelensky is coming to Canada, will address Parliament tomorrow. I think we're familiar with his message after listening to his addresses at other junctures this week. What's your message? What's the Canadian government's message to President Zelensky when he's here?
Okay, I have to be careful, and I know what you're reporting, but I'm not here confirming anything. But I will say this. I think that all Canadians, and certainly our government, and I personally, recognize the heroic role that President Zelensky is playing in fighting for democracy, and in a fight which really is about democracy versus dictatorship. It really is about good versus evil. And I think it would be a privilege for Canada and Canadians to be able to welcome him here and to tell him and to show him we support him. And in supporting him, and he's very clear that this is not about him. He's very clear that his role is to embody and represent the heroism millions and millions of Canadians are showing every single day. It would be a huge privilege for our country to be able to show Ukrainians and the world that we are steadfast, that we get the stakes here. And at a time when there are political forces in the world, in democracies, who are trying to muddy the waters, who refuse to accept that this really is, as President Zelensky has been saying, this is about good versus evil. It would be wonderful if Canada had an opportunity to show which side we're on and to show that to the people of Ukraine and to the world.
I'll leave it on that note. Minister, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it as always.
Thank you.